So today on True-Moto-Resto, we're going to start tackling the frame and the swing arm and a bunch of the big metal bits for the CBX750. Get those ready for paint. So I've just started to clean the frame at this point. I'm not sanding anything. All I'm doing is degreasing. So I'm using a combination of this degreaser. This is just a professional Proform wax and grease remover. This is the kind of stuff you use on body panels before you start sanding them for paint prep. So I'm using that stuff. And then I'm also using, in some of the hard to reach places, just a brake clean product. You can use anything. This is just one of the many that I use. I don't find any one to be particularly better than the other, but it's kind of good just for getting in some of the nooks and crannies, especially back here where you've got suspension linkage and chain grease and crap and whatnot. So there's a lot of cleaning to do before I start to scuff this thing up and sand it and prime and do whatever else I need to do before it goes to the paint booth. So that's what I'll be doing. I'm not going to spend an inordinate amount of time filming the cleaning process, but I'll do a little bit just so you can see what I do. And basically the same thing will happen here. That I'll pull that chain right off there. I just haven't bothered doing anything with it yet, but that'll come off. I'll get that cleaned in some kerosene. And then there's all kinds of crud and crap on here from the chain. So I'll be taking off this this rubber chain slider. That'll come off. And then there's probably a few other things in here. Some of these other fittings that need to actually come out that are still in there. I'm going to take as much of that stuff out as I can before I get to work on sanding and painting that swing arm. And yeah, the center stand will get painted. That suspension linkage will get painted. Probably the triple clamps will get painted. And somewhere amongst this giant pile of parts is the brace for the rear brake. That needs to get painted at the same time as the swing arm because it's all the same silver. So I'll have to fish that out. It's in there somewhere. I'll find that. And so yeah, that's what we're going to be working on next. So the first cleaning has been done. So on the frame, what I did, I used that wax and grease remover over the whole frame. I did that twice. Then I used a brake cleaner on the frame, wiped everything down again. Right now I've got the oil galleries kind of plugged up there with some shop towel, just to stop any of the oil kind of creeping back out and dripping. And then it's going to be, I'll use a Scotch Brite pad and acetone to, I did actually wipe this whole thing with acetone once already. So yeah, it's been degreaser, brake cleaner, acetone so far. And now I'll use a Scotch Brite pad to scuff it up with some acetone as well, just to keep it lubed. And then I'll go over any of the areas that have got some rust spots with some 320 sandpaper, maybe a Dremel if there's any kind of surface rust there, just to get rid of that stuff. And then I'll prime all that stuff up. So that's the plan for the frame. The swing arm, I did the first cleaning of the swing arm and the center stand and some of the suspension components. So I just use an old wash tub and first first round through I use kerosene. It just helps to take all the chain grease and crap off, and then after that, brake cleaner. So this will be cleaned again with degreaser. It'll be cleaned again with acetone, and then once I'm comfortable that I've got all the oil and grease and crap and everything off it, then I'll sand it and get it ready for painting. So I know some of you are probably wondering why the heck I'm not taking this frame in to be media blasted and powder coated. Well, there's a good reason. And it's mainly because the powder coating company that is closest to me, it's about half an hour away in the city, and really my only option because of how remote I am, sucks, to put it bluntly. I had 2 frames powder coated by them in the past, and both of those frames I had to have them take them back and strip them back again, and then I ended up getting them painted. The finishes were, it was supposed to be like a shiny factory Honda silver finish on my VF1000Rs, and instead of, probably quite similar to the finish on this is what they should have been, but they came back looking like they'd been applied by a stucco gun. One was like just really lumpy and wasn't smooth, and the other one was just very, very rough and textured. So either and or both, too much powder, not enough heat, nothing flowed out properly, I guess. I don't know if they give the old motorcycle frames to the new guys to work on or something like that, but they were terrible. And not only that, when I did get them blasted and cleaned again to get all of the powder coat off that they so poorly applied, but the frames were then full of media, whatever they were using for doing the media blasting. The insides of the frames were full, so I guess wherever there were open sections or drain holes or whatnot, it was just full. So so I no longer use them for powder coating. Maybe one day we'll get a better company up here that can do a much better product. So that's why I have to sand this thing down and take it to my buddy's place who's got a proper paint booth, and there I will paint it. And that way I can at least get a guarantee that the finish is going to be somewhat resembling factory, although yes, it will not be as durable as powder coat. The other consideration, given how much media and crap they tend to get in anywhere, and they never did a good job of blocking off thread holes and bearing races and all that kind of stuff, or anywhere where the bearing races would sit. And since the oil runs through the frame on this bike, right, it comes kind of up and down through here. These are the oil venturis down here and up here. I would probably have to take the time to manufacture blank off plates for those and just hope like heck that they didn't take them off, because the last thing I would want on this frame is to have blasting media inside the oil passage of the frame. That would just be a disaster, because no matter how much you try, you'd never get all of that stuff out of there. So in this case, it's just better safe than sorry. We'll spray paint it, and we'll go from there. So what I have here is just some of the areas I've sanded off the surface rust on the frame, and I sprayed some rust converter on here, and you can see kind of in there it's kind of a purplish speckles on it. So that's any of the areas that were slightly pitted, where the rust was kind of still there a little bit. You can't really see it with the naked eye when you sand it down, but basically if it turns purple, then there's still a trace of of rust. And because I don't want to, this is a frame, I don't want to be grinding excess metal off here. And as I said before, I'm not taking this to the powder coater. So the idea was that I'll take all the surface rust off as best I can, and then treat it with the rust converter. And then after that, well, now that it's dry, I'm going to hand sand it again. And the only place that any of that converter might be left is going to be in the deeper pitted areas that I don't want to be, grinding the living daylights out of, because it's a frame. So, and then once I've sanded it again, I'm going to use a etching primer on here. This one could do with a little bit more work. It's got a little bit of rust as I look at it through the camera lens. All right, so we got first coat of primer on here. Actually, it's not the first coat, it's the second coat of primer. I did an etch primer coat, very light sanding, and then this is the first coat of a primer filler or primer surfacer. And then I'll sand this again and prime it probably a couple more times. The fairly fresh coat of primer on parts of the spring arm that had a little bit of surface rust that I cleaned up, and then once that dries, I'll flip that over and deal with the other side. All right, so I just thought I'd show some of the plugs that I put in anywhere where there's a thread. So like in here where there's normally a bolt going, these are just like rubber plugs, and so they're just kind of handy to put in there. It stops the paint getting into the threads and any threaded lugs or tabs or whatever. Like there's a threaded peg here and here, so I just tape those off so you don't get the threads all galled up with paint. So see, the rubber plugs are kind of anywhere and everywhere where I have threads to cover up. So the only thing left to do now is I'm going to clean the face of these oil connectors, these oil gallery connectors. And then I'll put some tape over those, and then I'll cut around the edge with, right around this edge with a razor blade once I've cleaned all the oil off. And then she'll be ready for the paint shop. So it's an Imron 3.5 polyurethane. So what? No clear coat, single stage.
Single stage industrial product.
And this stuff is just generally more durable than a
acid resistant, fuel resistant, so on, so on, so on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
You paint food grade for doing vessels. Factories use it for railings and structures and stuff. 4 parts of the single stage black, 1 part of the 9T00A activator, and this gets mixed at 1 ounce per sprayable gallon. So I put in just a small portion of a teaspoon into that container, and that'll just speed up the curing process. For it. Of course, I like to use my disposable coffee cups here. Saves me having to clean out my mixing containers.
frame has been painted. And this stuff we have to paint separately because the other stuff's got to dry first. It came up pretty well, but it's so difficult to get that gun inside all the nooks and crannies when you've got the gravity feed cap or gravity feed paint can on the top of the gun and getting into all of the hard to reach spots here. It's kind of a bit of a contortionist act, and sometimes you end up kind of touching the frame as you move into some of the more tricky spots, but I mean overall it came out pretty well. Day 2. Good to go? There we go, we're good to go. The same distance as I would have done on the bigger panels?
Yeah, same distance. Make a full pass like up each side,
Yeah, okay.
and then get your tops and bottoms in.
Okay.
But remember, this isn't the same as you had yesterday for runs.
Yeah, gotcha. There we go, 2 coats of clear. That's a resort to using my friend's spray gun because mine died, but see if we can get that fixed when I get home, or if it's completely dead. We'll see. Anyway, these turned out really well. So I'll come back tomorrow and pick those up. All right, so we are back home at the shop with the frame and a couple of the parts that I painted black, the suspension linkage and the center stand. I'll go back in the morning once the swing arm and the brake brace have dried properly, and bring those back here, and then we'll decide what we're doing next. Likely I'll let this sit and really cure up for probably a couple more days anyway before I decide to do anything with it. Maybe less chance of it getting chipped. So we'll see how that works out. I did leave these Japanese stickers on the frame and taped around them just for a bit more authenticity. And I find that if every single thing gets stripped off, and then you can't get reproductions of those. I mean, I don't know anybody that can print Japanese. Not to mention, what does it even say? So both of those have been left on, and I find that it just adds a little bit of, authenticity to to the restoration process when it's finished. Same with I kept the sticker. There's a sticker that goes on here for the paint code. That'll go back on as well. It just kind of popped off. The adhesive was no good on it. I've got fresh stickers for here. So all of that stuff just kind of lends itself to just making the bike look more factory. Hey, so we got the swing arm and the brace back from the paint shop. So everything is here. That's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.